bring your Bible, would you turn with me to 2 Samuel 23? We're going to read from verse 13 to 17. 2 Samuel 23. It will be on the screen. Yep. 2 Samuel 23, 13 to 17. Before we read, let me just say, we come to the last sermon on our series now. We've been on the series of King David, the imperfect king, for over 2 months now. Last time we learned about David, especially David's hesed. Remember that? We learned about David's kindness toward Mephibosheth. So that word kindness in Hebrew is hesed, we learned. Or, if you want to speak proper Hebrew, it's that kind of sound, hesed, right? In English, we just say hesed. So we learned about that, about David's hesed towards Mephibosheth. That's last time we met. It's a special Hebrew word that when we talk about David's kindness toward Mephibosheth, we say it was covenant love. Not just any kind of kindness, it's actually a special, deep meaning word. A deep meaning Hebrew word that we say covenant love. So today we're going to look at that word again in this passage from verse 13. Let me read to you from verse 13. And 3 of the 30 chief men went down and came about harvest time to David at the cave of Adullam, when a band of Philistines was encamped in the valley of Rephaim. David was then in a stronghold, and the garrison of the Philistines was then at Bethlehem, the enemies at Bethlehem. And David said lovingly, "Oh, that someone would give me water to drink from the well of Bethlehem that is by the gate." 16. Then the 3 mighty men broke through the camp of the Philistines and drew water out the camp of the Philistine and drew water out of the well of Bethlehem that was by the gate, and carried and brought it to David. But he would not drink of it. He poured it out to the Lord and said, "Far be it from me, O Lord, that I should do this. Shall I drink the blood of the men who went at risk of their lives?" Therefore he would not drink it. These things the 3 mighty men did. While the word hesed is not here in the passage that we just read, the meaning of hesed is all in this story, in this passage. In this passage of scripture, actually the word of hesed, why I keep going back to the word of hesed, because there's just no equivalent English word that capture the meaning close enough. There's just none. So we just have to go back to it. If you are to learn one Hebrew word, this is it. Learn this word, because there's just no English word that have all this rich meaning. So when you refer to it, just call it hesed. And in English word, this is why, if you look at the Bible, wherever the word hesed appears, it's been translated to different words. Kindness, steadfast love, loyalty, favor. Depending on the context, they translated it differently. So, and last time we looked at it, it was kindness. When it was really more than kindness, it was a covenant love that David showed to Mephibosheth. So today we're going to look at this word again. Another possible translation, which we're going to look at today, of the word hesed is the meaning of devotion. The sense of devotion, loyalty. So that's what we're going to look at. Hesed in the sense of devotion and loyalty. So we're going to look at under 3 headings to help us this morning. So we're going to look at the mighty man's devotion, David's mighty man's devotion to David. That's the first one we're going to look at. And secondly, we're going to look at David's devotion to God. And finally, we're going to look at God's devotion to David. Okay? So every now and then, I feel obligated that I need to confess to you of my in originality, right? Not my originality, my in originality in my sermons. Today is no different. I must preface it with this. The first time I heard this passage being preached in a way that I'm going to preach today is back when I was in Bible college. Actually, I was as a student, I listened to the recording of this sermon by a guy, an American guy named Edmund Clowney. Edmund Clowney, he was probably dead for about 10 years when I was listening to the recording. So Edmund Clowney passed away in 2005. I listened to this probably 10 years after that. He was a pastor, he was a theologian and a professor in America, in Westminster Theological Seminary. So this kind of sermon outline, it's pretty much his. Okay? It's not mine, it's his, it's my way of delivering it, but the gist of it, the way he connected the word hesed to devotion, it's Edmund Clowney's, not mine. I'm not as brilliant as him. Okay? So, but we just have to understand this word hesed. There's just no one word, no one English word that could capture it. All right? So that's why if we go back to different passage, we might dig deeper into a different side of this word hesed, covenant love. Okay? So the first one, the mighty man's devotion to David. The mighty man's hesed to David. So today we're going to look at from the word hesed as in devotion. So and loyalty, devotion / loyalty. But what is loyalty? If in English word loyalty, what do you understand as loyalty? Well, husband and wife, loyalty means you're being faithful, right? So there's that kind of sense as well. Being devoted, being loyal means you being faithful. So that's how we understand the word loyalty. And in Melbourne, you cannot escape this word of devotion and loyalty and attach it to sports. Like if you look at sports fan, they have their loyalty regardless how bad their team is performing in the season. They're loyal. Their children loyal to it. Their grandparents loyal. They just all out for, say, we are Collingwood fan regardless how bad they are. We're still gonna be Collingwood fan. If you follow basketball, however bad Golden State Warriors is doing, the last on the ladder, we're still gonna support them. Even though I know no ones who play and that I support, but that's loyalty. You just all out. And in Melbourne, we're familiar with that. This is a city that is crazy about their sports, and I think we have two public holidays, isn't it, dedicated to sports. One to football, the other one to horse. Right? There's no other place like it, and so people would just paint their faces to the team's color, wear the jerseys, and do all they can to support the team. That's loyalty. That's one way we could understand what loyalty is. But David's mighty man's loyalty to and devotion to David, it's much more than that, isn't it? When you read that verses 13 to 17, it's much more than that. It's to the point that they're willing to die for David. Yes, I support Golden State Warriors or I support Collingwood. I wouldn't want to die for them. David's man loyalty and devotion to David is to the point of death. And that's how it's different. So what's going on in this story, in this short passage that I just read? Okay, it's first of all, I want to say it's not clear in terms of timing. Okay, the timing as to when this happened is not that clear because we should have seen by now 1 Samuel to 2 Samuel. It's not quite in a chronological order. Okay, it's not quite in a chronological order. So this is perhaps because David's not in the palace like when he like when he was reigning and get comfortable. He's not. He's in the cave. He's in the cave. But King Saul perhaps already dead by now. That's why he's fighting the Philistines. It wasn't David, it wasn't Saul, so perhaps Saul is dead now, And David is now in the cave fighting the Philistine. And the passage that we read say the Philistine has their stronghold in Bethlehem. And of course, Bethlehem is David's hometown. That's a place where he grew up. That's why it's got mentioned there. So David in the cave, in the desert, and people came to support him. That's all these mighty men of David is all about. They're volunteers that say, I'm supporting David. I'm going to help him to the palace to be the king of Israel. So they're there to support him, to fight for him, to fight for David with him against the Philistines. And we could say this special neat man of David is David's special forces, like the SWAT team, like the SAS. Is it SAS? SC? I don't know. Special forces, basically, whatever. I think SAS. Is it SAS? Maybe. Yeah. SES is the emergency. SAS is the special forces, right? Yes. SAS, not SES. Not the one who help you when a tree fall down in front of your house. Not that one. So these are David's close-knit friend and loyal bodyguard. They're highly skilled. They're highly loyal. They're deeply committed. They're devoted to David. That's why we call these mighty men. They have hesed towards David. They have devotion to David. Let's read from verse 14 to 15. David was then in the stronghold, and the garrison of the Philistine was then at Bethlehem. And David said longingly, he didn't say to anyone, he's just pondering. He said longingly in the desert, in the cave, oh, that someone would give me water to drink from the well of Bethlehem that is by the gate. That is by the gate means past the gate, right? So if you are capturing that city, you occupying that city, that well is protected behind the gate, right? So that's what happened there. We must remember, right? This is now Philistines there. David couldn't just go in and have a sip of the water from the well of Bethlehem. So that's the dilemma, right? It's the King David. He's longing for drink from the fresh water from the well of Bethlehem. Yet there's enemies there. So I don't know if you can imagine how he felt at this moment. A lot of us here are migrants. And being a migrant means you have hometown that you might missed. For me, it's for the food. I've been in Australia since 95. I still miss food from back home. Hence, we're going to have food from back home that I love this coming Sunday. And David is the same. He's just like long for that fresh water from Bethlehem. And I want to highlight, though, the fact that David didn't ask his men to do this. It is his men in verse 16 that decided. Let's read verse 16. Can we have verse 16? Then the three mighty men broke through the camp of the Philistines and drew water out of the well of Bethlehem that was by the gate and carried and brought it to David. But he would not drink of it. He poured it out to the Lord. So when David was pondering, the three men, these mighty men said, David missed the water from Bethlehem. Let's do it, guys. What are you, what are you still standing there for? Let's go for it. What just happened there? What just happened? Three of his mighty men overheard him and decided, if our king wants it, he will have it. That's their devotion. They just say, David wants it, we're going to get it. We're going to get it. So they showed their devotion and loyalty by risking their lives. This is not just going around the corner to the 7-Eleven and get Gatorade for David. It's not. This is passing through the desert 3 of them in the enemy stronghold. Pass the gate. Draw the water. Can you imagine how surprised the Philistines were when 3 men come and fight them? And then all they did is rush to the well, get the water, and fight all the way back. And then run away with the water. The Philistines were just like, what had just happened? This is strange. Risking their life for a jug of water from the well of Bethlehem. That is some devotion, isn't it? That is some devotion. That's some loyalty. 3 people doing that. I sometimes wonder, can't help when reading this and wonder, do we still have this kind of devotion and loyalty today? Do you see? I mean, when we read something like this, when we saw something like this in the movies, we would like amaze, and we would probably be so touched that we would cry of kind of amazement, kind of cry like, man, that is so touching, that was so awesome. But do we still see this kind of devotion and loyalty today? Do we, I honestly could hardly find any example of this kind of devotion and loyalty, not just outside of church, but inside of church. You see, in this case, water is precious. We must understand that. It's perhaps more precious than gold or any money. During wartime in the desert, water is life and death. This is precious. And I just imagine, these 3 mighty men fight. I'm not much a runner, but I'm a jogger. But even if I jog for half an hour, I would come home thirsty. Imagine doing a boxing in a gym for 3 hours or 5 hours, for however long the journey these men need to cross the desert, fight the enemy, stole a jug of water, and then all the way back. Can you imagine the temptation as you were, after fighting, walking through the desert, thirsty, and you have a fresh jug of water? It's like you haven't drink for a while, and you're so thirsty, and then you got Gatorade, ice cold Gatorade in front of you. The temptation for them to just, oh man, let's just drink half of it. David he didn't even expect this, right? So let's just drink half of it and give him half. Didn't even cross their mind to do that. That's devotion. It's like, we did this for David, we're gonna give it to him. So their journey back perhaps was the hardest. Perhaps harder than fighting the enemies, because perhaps when they fight the enemies, the Philistines, they were still strong. But the journey back was not the case. But did they even tempted to do so? Perhaps. But did they do it? No. Their hesed to David was real. They resisted any temptations, and they brought it to David. And what did David do next is unthinkable. And that's what we're going to look at in the second point. David's devotion to God. So David's devotion to God, let's look at the last bit of verse 16. Is it still up there? Verse 16. The last bit, it says, as they carried and brought it to David, he would not drink of it. He poured it out to the Lord. What would you do if you were the 3 men who risked your life, cross the desert, fight the enemies, all the way back, tempted to drink that ice cold water from Bethlehem, and you present it to your king? Say, my king, we overheard what you want, your desire, and here it is. or gift to you. And David said, I would not have any of this. And he poured it to the ground. Just picture the face of the three men. Can you imagine? Just picture it. I love to see if Hollywood made a movie of this scene. And just want to see the zoom in close-up zoom to this face of three men. It's just will be beautiful, beautiful sight, isn't it? And it's in the desert, so the water probably wouldn't wet the ground very long at all, right? The sun would have consumed it all out in an instant with the heat in the desert. We could have also said in this case that David have been very sensitive. Perhaps if your pastor is like that, you would have said that to your pastor. Man, I baked him the best cake and all he did was to share it with people. We bake it for him. How dare he share it to other people? Perhaps we should say that. Perhaps we say, man, David is so insensitive. The three men risked their life and he did not even have a sip. He poured it out. How could he? After all that the man did, how could he do that? Well, let's look at the reason. Verse 17. And this is David's reason. He said, far be it from me, O Lord, that I should do this. Shall I drink the blood of the men who went at the risk of their lives? Therefore he would not drink it. These things the three mighty men did. He offered it back to the Lord because he loved these three men, not because he was being insensitive. Because he understands that these three men, what these three men has sacrificed in order to get that jug of water for him. He understood the sacrifice and the devotion and the loyalty. David said, I can't accept this. This is too much. This belongs to you, God, my Lord. I don't deserve this, David said. What a great leader. What a great king David was. We must say though, he wasn't thirsty. He's in the cave, he's probably well supplied with water. When he said, I wish I could taste that fresh water from the well of Bethlehem, that wasn't because he was thirsty. That's not the point. The point is that's his hometown. He has been anointed as king of Israel. And the enemies occupied his hometown. It's not about the water. It's about the fact that he's in the cave, anointed as king of Israel, and he remembered the promise of God as he was anointed as king, that he will be king over Israel. But what happened? The enemies, the Philistines, is at Bethlehem. He's longing not for water, but for God's promise to come true. That he'll be king over Israel, that he will occupy the land that God has promised the people of God. That's what he's longing for. He doesn't long for the water. He's not thirsty. He longs for God's promise to come true, to be fulfilled. And he couldn't bear to receive the honor that the man so unselfishly gave him. The honor, in his opinion, in David's own word, the honor that only belongs to the Lord. He said, I couldn't bear it. I couldn't have this. I couldn't receive this. This belongs to the Lord. David understood clearly that the man could have died. In fact, if you look at it, I'm sure David, as a war person, somebody who fight in the war, in the battle many times, David probably understand. Three men storming Bethlehem, pass through the gate, get the water. They survive. If it's not for the Lord's blessing and grace upon these three men, they would have been killed. They could not have survived. Yes, they are the elite, they are the special force, they are the SAS. But they are not Superman. They are not God. They could have easily been killed if it's not for the Lord. David understood that. If these three men succeed, it's because of the Lord. So right there and then, he poured out the water to the ground. And the sun, the heat of the sun, swallowed it all up. David showed that his devotion and loyalty is not to the man, but to the Lord. So as the three men showed their devotion and loyalty to David, David in turn showed the devotion of his devotion not to the man, but to the Lord. He said, this water belongs to God. David understood. As we are serving God's people, you and I serve God's people, serve one another. Understand this as David understood, as he served his man and his country, that he is serving the Lord. So as we serve one another, as we serve God's people, remember that we're not serving men, that we're serving the Lord. The honor, even the strength, the sustenance comes from the Lord. So this leads us to our final point. So the final point is this: God's devotion to David. So are we then to have devotion like the mighty man to David? And we are to have devotions like David's devotion to God? Is that what's this about? We look at David's man devotion to him and David's devotion to God, and let's do that? Is that what this is about? Yes, and more. Yes, we must be like David's man, have devotion to David, and yes, we must be like David, having devotion to God, but more. And that's God's devotion to David that we must look at, because the word hesed carries more meaning than human devotion and loyalty. Last time we looked at hesed, we say hesed is God's covenant love. It's much more and it's much deeper than any one of us could do. Hesed is much deeper than that. Hesed is God's covenant, God's love toward his people. So God's been faithful to David, and David understood that first when he see three men survive that trip, that crazy journey, fighting Philistine just for a jug of water. So David see that God has been faithful to him. And David in turn show his devotion back to God by honoring God with the water. But let us not miss the last part of the chapter, which we haven't read, which we're going to look at. I'm probably going to skip a little bit. So last part of the chapter 23, he lists all the names. The author lists all the names of David's mighty men. It says 37 of them. If you count, perhaps there are 36. And then you have to add Joab, the leader of the pack. There's some debate about where this 37 comes from. How do you get to 37? Because if you count the list, it's not 37. But we have to take for it. Maybe it's not all listed. But there's a list of men mentioned in verse 24 to 39. 23, 24 to 39. I'm going to read a few and then I'm going to jump to verse 39, okay? Because there's just a list of names, and if you know your Bible, it's hard to pronounce these names, so I'm not going to even try. I'm try a little bit and then we're going to skip. Asahel, the brother of Joab, was one of the 30. Elhanan, the son of Dodo of Bethlehem. Shammah of Harod. Elika of Harod. Helez, the Peltite. Ira, the son of Ikesh of Tekoa. Abiezer of Anathoth. Mabunai, the Hushathite. Zalmon the Hathahite, Maharai of Netophath. Let's jump to verse 39. And the last one that's being listed there is Uriah the Hittite, 37 in all. These are the mighty men of David. Do you remember the last name? Uriah the Hittite, sounds familiar? We looked at Uriah a few sermons back. Uriah the Hittite, one of David's finest men. Loyal, devoted to David. Perhaps if you can't remember Uriah, perhaps you will remember Uriah's wife. Uriah's wife is Bathsheba, the beautiful Bathsheba. Remember Bathsheba? Well, let's just say this. Long after this time has passed, this incident has passed, David in the cave has passed. David was so relaxed in his palace. He was walking. He got up late in the afternoon. He didn't go to war and battle with his men. When Joab and Uriah and all the 37 men were fighting in the field, David in the palace, sleeping until noon. And he walked in the palace and he looked at Bathsheba taking a bath or shower. And he likes her and he loves her. And he had Bathsheba brought over. And the rest is history, people say. He got Bathsheba pregnant. Well, the husband, the loyal Uriah, was fighting the war for David. And it didn't end there. Bathsheba came and told David that she was pregnant, and David tried to cover it up. David tried to cover it up, and we saw this already. Finally, because David tried to manipulate, and Uriah called him back so that he would go to Bathsheba, and then he can claim, well, Bathsheba came back from the war and the pregnancy is because of Uriah. But no, because Uriah was so loyal and devoted. He was called back into the palace in the middle of the battle. He knows there's a message that he must take to Joab, the commander. So he waited. The Bible say, when David said, go home, go to your wife. He said, no, my men are fighting. I can't. So he stayed in the palace. And David knows that he can't send Uriah back home. He said, well, then there's no other options. And David wrote a letter to Joab. Make sure Uriah is killed in the battle. And hand over the letter to Uriah. Uriah, give this to your commander. So not only David slept with Bathsheba, Uriah's wife, one of his finest men, he killed him, he murdered him as well. So as amazing as David's devotion to God, David's story is not for us to emulate him. Far from it. So don't go home reading after listening to the sermon on David and read about how amazing David was, his devotion to God, and say, man, I want to be like David. Don't! You don't want to be like David. You don't want to be like David. He's an adulterer, he's a murderer. That's why David's story is for us not to emulate. Not to emulate him. David's story is pointing us to a better David, to a better king, you see. So when you read a king like David that falls short, it gives us this kind of hunger to see a better king. Like, man, I just wish there's a better king than David, who wouldn't commit adultery and murder, who would be fully and entirely devoted to God. So David give us, when you read story about David, it should give us that kind of sense of hunger and desire to see a better David, a better and truer king than David. So who is David pointing to? Why is stories being told to us? Well, he's pointing to Jesus. Remember, the other popular name of Jesus in the New Testament is the Son of David. Again and again in the Bible, in the New Testament, it says Jesus, the Son of David. The New Testament author knows this. That David, King David, where King David falls short and failed, King Jesus triumph and succeed. David's pointing to Christ our Lord. While David failed, Jesus did not fail. When David stopped to be devoted and loyal to God, the Lord did not stop being loyal and devoted. His hesed continued. God could have just said, well, David, you blew it. You blew it. That's it. That's it. But God's hesed cannot be broken. Its covenant love cannot be broken. God's devotion to His people cannot be broken. So what did He do? What did God do? To fix that, He sent His Son Jesus to redeem you and me. And that is the ultimate act of hesed, God hesed, on the cross. So when you read the Old Testament word of hesed, and it rich meaning, picture the cross, a crucified Lord. That is hesed. As Jesus has His arms open wide, nailed to the cross, that's hesed. We are, all of us in this place, ultimately called to be loyal, not to man, not to one another, but our devotion is to God, who has been faithful in His covenant to us. Let's close our eyes and bow our heads.